Hello everyone, back home from TIFF, and we have another review from you. This one was another much anticipated film coming into TIFF, The Brutalist, last year. Remember that one? Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, that was one of the greatest theatrical experiences I've ever had. And the very next year, Mona Fastfold and her husband, Brady Corbet, who co-wrote The Brutalist together, they collaborated once again for The Testament of Anne Lee.
We keep calling it Queen Anne.
Do I keep calling it Queen Anne?
But yes, this is The Testament of Anne Lee, and this film is based on real events taking place in the 18th century surrounding Anne Lee, who was the founding leader of the Shaker movement, whose followers believed Anne to be the female reincarnation, manifestation of Christ.
So if you're ever curious what a musical by Robert Eggers would look like, I imagine it would look a little something like The Testament of Anne Lee. Cutting to the chase, there is a lot I admire about this film, a lot, but I think you admired a lot more than I did.
I actually really liked this film. This is one of those times where, one of these rare times that we actually...
Doesn't happen often.
We don't see eye to eye.
No. Yeah, this movie was a mixed bag for me. There are moments that recalled the sheer ambition and grandeur of The Brutalist, especially on a technical level. In that same way where like The Brutalist felt like it was stuffed into a time capsule from the 70s, only to be unearthed and presented in 2024. The Testament of Anne Lee also feels like it's from another decade. The cinematography is shot on 70mm, creating a very unique experience. The colors are very rich, and that film quality lends to the 18th century time period. And this film separates itself from The Brutus a little bit because it's a musical of sorts. A very untraditional, a very untraditional musical. There are times throughout this film that the cinematography and the unique choreography and Daniel Blumberg's score, when they all harmonize together, it creates a lot of stirring moments. However, as a character study, I found the character of Anne Lee to be frankly pretty flat. I didn't find her narrative arc or the story to be all that compelling. That's where my main issue lies.
Yeah, I think I can see how the character study of Anne Lee feels a little lackluster, but I get the feeling that Mona and Brady really pride themselves in historical accuracy and their ability to really portray things historically accurate. And there just isn't much information that we have on Anne Lee. As it's stated in the film, she was illiterate, so she never really was able to document her story. So to me, it felt like they did the best with what they had, what little information is available about her. With that said, there is nothing lackluster about, I think, the rest of the film, in my opinion, because I found it to be quite mesmerizing and alluring. Also, it's really beautiful to look at.
You know that saying, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts?
Yeah.
I kind of felt the opposite about this movie. I felt like there were some exhilarating scenes that when you pick them out and watch them on their own, it's great, exhilarating. But as a whole, when you put them together, what do you really walk away with? I struggle to find a purpose for even this film kind of existing. My main takeaway, I guess it would be the whole film was about just religious prosecution. And the one film that I was reminded of was The Passion of Joan of Arc. And I suppose Anne Lee explores the unjust prosecution, specifically women, and how a patriarchal society will always see a woman with power as a threat to the status quo, I guess.
I honestly found it very interesting to learn about this, very progressive leader of the time. Also, it's not just a cut and dry biopic. I feel like it's more of an experience. There's so much more going on. But like I said, it is rare to hear about this kind of like very progressive religious leader. Her beliefs back then were like virtually unheard of. And through her journey, Anne Lee really stays true to her faith, to her convictions, regardless of the persecution. There are scenes that show how she's very progressive in her stance when it comes to gender equality, slavery, and race. And it shows how her ideas were in direct conflict with the Protestant mainstream beliefs, which I thought was pretty compelling and kind of badass of her.
Right, I mean, it's not your typical take. I will give the film credit. I mean, there are many scenes in Anne Lee of just scenes where her and her loyal followers are all rejoicing together. They're shaking and they're hymning, and sometimes they're repeating the same word over and over and over again. And from what I remember, that's not really far off from the truth, right?
Yeah, like again, historical accuracy with Mona and Brady. They, I think, really stuck to the truth on those things.
And Festival doesn't really portray the Shakers as some like kooky cult. She seems to show great respect and admiration for Ann Lee and the Shakers, but ultimately it was like this saint-like, uncomplicated portrayal of Ann Lee that just didn't make her character, to me at least, very interesting. She starts as a wide-eyed, passionate faithful, and that's how she is the entire film. Like, that's it. How she starts is how it ends. And like you said, there's not a lot of information available on Ann Lee, but I just felt like there was an opportunity to fictionalize a compelling story, whatever you want to make up. Like, there's one scene earlier on that Ann Lee is disgusted at the sight of her parents fornicating, and then she magically has a vision from God proclaiming celibacy is the way to go. I mean, that was one scene that I found really amusing, because you start to question whether her faith is grounded in a true belief or whether it's just kind of an effort to avoid engaging in sexual activity with her husband. So personally, I would have loved if this story had us constantly questioning Anne's true motives throughout the entire film. But in Fast Forward's characterization, Ann Lee is a true prophet. She was prosecuted for it. And the Shakers also made furniture, and that's it.
So I know you say that they could have fictionalized it, but again, I think Mona was trying to make something that was historically accurate. And also, side note, the furniture and the architecture is one of the most like historically meaningful things that the Shakers left behind. Historians to this day talk about the advancements that they made in these areas. I feel like Mona and Brady also must have this like fascination with architecture and furniture.
They're going to make a biopic on IKEA.
If you look a little deeper, Ann Lee's famous saying that she kept saying over and over again was, do your work as if you had 1,000 years to live and as if you were to die tomorrow. This is something that the Shakers lived by. They did excellent work in everything that they did, from building their furniture to building their infrastructures that they lived in to sweeping the floors. Everything they did in excellence. That's how Ann Lee taught them. And in the film, everything is so intricately perfect, historically accurate, from the buildings to the tiny little hooks on the walls to hang their chairs and their hats that they, when they weren't being used.
That was the furniture, though, in this. It was such a small part of the film. I learned more about the furniture just listening to you right now than I watched in the actual film.
Okay, look, the point I'm trying to make is that Mona executed even the smallest details with such precision and historical accuracy. So in her own way, the film itself is a representation of Ann Lee's perfectionism. I think Ann Lee would be really proud.
What a bunch of gobbledygook. Are you Ann Lee's PR lady? What is going on right now? You just care about accuracy so much that you just geek out over little hooks on the wall. I mean, what are we talking about? I don't really care about accuracy because I don't learn anything really personal about Ann Lee at all. And I should mention that I don't blame Amanda Seyfried really for any of the issues that I have with the film. Not only is she a gifted singer, which we've seen before in Mamma Mia and Les Miserables, but she is absolutely committed to this role, right? Yeah. She gives every ounce of herself to the role. Yeah. She does have an accent. And, I can't speak to the accuracy of the accent. It sounded fine to me, but it does sound like an accent that could easily be parodied on SNL.
I think that's kind of unfair. I was honestly pleasantly surprised by her accent. I thought it was, and her performance, I thought they were great. And of course, her singing and dancing, her dedication, I believed every second of her performance personally. Everyone's performance was fitting for the time period, in my opinion. I didn't think anything of it.
Yeah, and in case we didn't make it clear, the Shakers were a religious group in which their practices included dancing and wailing and shaking together to praise God. So this is not your average Broadway musical, but there are a lot of these musical segments in this film that are more like worship dance ceremonies. The congregants all kind of grunt and thump together. It genuinely isn't like anything that I've ever seen before. And Daniel Blumberg's score is stirring, accompanied with choreography that does feel both interpretive but also precisely arranged.
And yeah, to speak to your music, historically the Shakers are known to have like very simple chorus type songs with a single melody, and they definitely stuck to that in the film. And I think it's a part of what made it so entrancing, the repetitive nature of the songs. They just keep ringing in your ears like well after the movie is over.
And naturally, a lot of the songs, because they're in that fashion, they don't progress the story forward. They're more like spiritual detours in the story. And I think that's part of the reason also why this film didn't have that novelistic quality that The Brutalist had. Because after about the 6th or 7th one of these songs, the songs really start to feel like story roadblocks for me. Like they created this kind of stop and go, and I could never just get into a flow with the story.
I think that's fair. I saw the shaking portions of the film as more like insight on how these gatherings must have looked like. Like I was just a fly on the wall watching this religious experience that I wasn't supposed to be watching. That's why I liked it.
Another highlight of the film that does lend itself to being quite the spectacle is the production design, and the set pieces are really jaw-dropping. There's fast ships, period, authentic sets. One scene involves like a large fire. I thought that was absolutely like jaw-dropping. Overall, I would recommend people watch An Lee, because there is a lot to enjoy and rave over in the film. I just didn't find myself getting swept up in its story, especially in the same way as The Brutalist, which maybe is unfair to compare the two. But I didn't get swept up in the story too much, so I'm going to give the film a 7 out of 10.
I liked it more, as you can tell. I'm at an 8 out of 10 for this one. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Highly recommend it.
Good hooks. The last time I checked, An Lee is still seeking a distributor, so I'm not sure when the film is going to be released. But what is its Oscar potential, assuming it does come out in time? Honestly, I mean, there's a world where this does get a lot of nominations, because it is a very craft-heavy film, and coming off the boots of the very successful The Brutalist, people may look a little closer at this film. However, I sort of believe that this film won't come out this year, and even if it does, I kind of feel like this film won't materialize in nominations. If it does get picked up by like say like A24, I think most likely it would be actress, because the field's looking relatively thin right now. Cinematography, costume design, production design, score, and original song, that would be like its best day with sound and screenplay. However, realistically, it's probably around 5 or 6 nominations, but again, I think it's more likely that this film kind of just falls by the wayside. But that's what I think An Lee's prospects are. What do you guys think?
And let us know when you watch this film. We'd like to know who you agree with more. Are you with me or with Ryan on this one?
We have more reviews coming your way. Thank you so much for watching. And until next time, everyone, we'll see you at TIFF
and the Oscars. Actually, I never told you this before.
What?
I'm going to tell you something.
All right.
I actually learned about the Shaker movement. I actually learned about the Shaker movement in elementary school.
Did you?
Yes, and our assignment was that we had to make an advertisement for people to join the Shaker movement.
Oh my God. What?
And you know what I did?
What?
I made it like a car's ad, like a car salesman ad. And I did not get
Really?
a good grade.
Really?
Yeah, because of public school. I think they teach about the Shaker movement in public schools. You didn't learn about it?
No, we probably learned about it, but I was a poor student. We were probably supposed to give a presentation on the Shaker movement. Everyone gave their like very nice presentation, and I went up there and just went for 4 minutes.